which takes me to what Clay mentioned earlier around what you're both offering, right? You know, the community, which takes me also into the in search of a compassionate male. In order to be able, if you're open and you're willing, and you're aware that where you've been has not worked and the potential that you have to be at a much higher altitude than where you are right now, is to allow yourself, male, to integrate and join community with other woke men as yourselves.
Hello world, it's me, Dennis Tardan, and I am the producer of this podcast, In Search of the New Compassionate Male. I'm here with the founder, Clay Boykin. Hello, Clay.
Hi, Dennis.
We today get a chance to have another conversation, one in which all the angels in the universe observed, but we didn't record at that time. So we're going to get a chance to renew and to grow our relationship with you, Vanessa. And so, Vanessa Valdéz, it is such a pleasure. How are things in this COVID times there? You're in California?
I am in California, yes.
So give us some perspective on where you are and where you are emotionally and physically and spiritually on this journey. You know that we are in search of the new compassionate male, and you are growing and have your ear to the ground through your radio program and through the work. Tell me what's going on within Vanessa, and tell me what's going on within your listeners and all at this particular time in history.
All right. So I'm hearing three questions in one. So
take them and run.
Yeah, take whichever one you want.
I will start with myself. How I'm feeling around the energy right now with COVID is really talk about the compassionate male and in search of, right? Which really does change the paradigm. We're not saying it's here or, you know, come join us in our tribe, but let's explore together.
How beautiful.
Yeah. So that's where I am as the divine feminine. I feel as if I'm playing as some sort of beacon of light. It's almost as we're all here planting our seed around in search of the compassionate male. And it's my belief that it will take a woman who is grounded and present and very tuned in spiritually to be able to plant that seed within the compassionate male.
Yes.
Well, and you know, it's specifically speaks to why I'm not in search of the new compassionate man, because that divine male energy was in all gender,
all along the spectrum.
And you're right. For you to be able to bring that out and help awaken that within men is wonderful.
We were talking about one of the things that we're interested in, Vanessa, is the idea that the patriarchy was like the first stage of a rocket. It can only take us so far. But now, with the levels of complexity that we have in this world, the need for us to communicate and to collaborate at significantly higher levels, that we cannot do it from an authoritarian, top-down, male-led basis, that we need a new archetype, and this new archetype has to grow. Could you share with what you your thoughts on that, please?
Absolutely. And what I will be sharing with everyone, it's really a culmination of my own personal experiences as the divine feminine, and also to what I've experienced within my clients, my community, and also to part of my research. My research topic is really about integration of the masculine and the feminine so that we can both evolve. And I truly feel that that's the way to go forward, to be able to change and heal humanity from what has not worked. So going back to your question around patriarchy, when I hear the word patriarchy, it really does take me back into, we've been sort of kind of programmed to believe that it's only been some sort of negativity towards the women or vice versa. But I think that when it comes to patriarchy, both the masculine and the feminine have suffered tremendously.
Thank you. Oh, brilliant insight.
And from there, it takes me into, for instance, when it comes to wars, right? I work a lot with shamanism and ancestry lineage. So there's a lot there in terms of our own history. So we really kind of trace back in time. So I'm going to focus it when it comes to war, because that's the masculine energy, and how masculine energy from then, they've been programmed to believe that they have to repress. And the way to go forward in life is to really be in battle and to fight and to repress. So when it comes to repression, our body somatically always responds to whatever it is that we're repressing. And so that kind of even takes us into the wheels of energies, which are really chakras that reside within us. And whatever we repress, it gets blocked. So with men, what I've experienced with men within my clientele, that they're really suffering and they're dealing a lot with the heart chakra, because they're having a hard time to be able to leverage their voice and expand themselves and open themselves up to this new emergence of the compassionate male.
Wow. Well,
right? Are you not? You just went and read.
Yeah, you just told my story, because that's what happened to me. You know, jetting around the world and office in New York and blah blah blah. To the point when I was 53, I had a mystical experience coupled with a heart attack, because I was so blocked. Exactly what you're saying. And so, yeah, I can really identify with that.
And what you said, because Clay, you always talk about this, about how one of the big dangers is for us to compare wounds.
Oh gosh,
because we cannot compare wounds. We are all wounded by.
Yeah. This is something that I became conscious of the past couple of years, working with an organization called Gender Equity and Reconciliation International, and 28 years of work in 10 countries, creating a safe space for women and men to come together in a safe and sacred environment to recognize that, exactly like you said, Vanessa, we're all wounded by the patriarchy. And you're right, Dennis, it's not about whose wound is worse. That's not on the table. It's just that common ground is that we both carry a wound, and it's that common ground when we can work with that an alchemy occurs, that people involved with that type of work have a higher level of consciousness in that whole realm. And I believe that it's a higher level of compassion.
Yes, and that's one of the neat things that I so enjoyed about you, Vanessa. The first time that we got a chance to meet with you was your deep mystical aspect, that you have such a strong mysticism about you. And mysticism, to me, is a very powerful force. Yeah. It's a force, like, for example, none of us can see the wind, but we can feel the effects of it. And that is what, just to be in your presence is such a stunning experience, because of the mysticism that you bring.
Thank you. I receive that. And I feel that I'm a true believer that we have certain angels or characters or archetypes that follow us and guide us in our process. And they're there for everyone, not just for myself, but it's really just a matter of paying attention. So with that, I would love to share in resonance to the energy that I've been around. Mary Magdalene, which I have her right here.
The wonderful character. There's so many wonderful stories to know about her.
And so I'll touch on one just because it's very much in resonance to what we're talking about around in search of the compassionate male. And this whole concept about patriarchy and how both masculine and feminine have been affected by that. So it turns out that a few years ago, a book was revealed, and there's still talk about that mystical, energy around what that entails. But I don't believe in anything being really an accident. And I feel that in the times that it was discovered is exactly where this book knew we were being redirected to where we are now. And basically, it talks about the scriptures that Mary Magdalene actually left for all of us. So talk about this integration. It's coming now, which is Jesus spoke, but I spoke too. And in her scripture, they actually talk about the integration of how it was actually Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and they were in a union. They were in integrated, whatever that means, but they were in divine sacred union. And so somehow within the patriarchy, that piece of the story was collapsed. It was taken away from history. And so now we are here having this dialogue around the masculine. And I truly feel that to be able to ascend, right? First open and then ascend the in search of the compassionate male, it will be needed that we pay attention to the energy of the divine feminine, Mary Magdalene.
I so agree, because this is where we had a chance to talk to one of the great minds and experiencers of life, Don Frick, and he was talking about that. He was talking about how the mentors that men have had. The powerful leaders have had women as mentors and had this divine feminine.
Yeah, he had a woman mentor early on, and it was Don who in 1986 picked up on what Robert Greenleaf was talking about with respect to servant leadership, and Don has committed his life to, the elevation of consciousness around servant leadership, which coincides and just weaves right in together with a compassionate male.
Vanessa, when you were young, when you were in your teens, and you were what was your sense of the divine feminine and this? How did that grow in you as a because you have such a strong clarity and integration now. Can you talk a little bit about your journey, how you were coming to this?
Sure. At the age of 5, I had a really strong energy and friendship with Mary Magdalene. At the time, I wouldn't necessarily describe it in that way. I didn't really know who this energy was. I just knew that it was a feminine energy. And so at the time, she was like my imaginary friend. And I noticed that when she would arrive in my energy, I was in that role of She-Ra back then in the 80s. So kind of like She-Ra, and I have powers, and I have these super powers, and I'm powerful, and I'm at the same time, a goddess and divine. And so it kind of takes me back in time, which, interesting enough, to pay attention to when we're little, right? And even our imaginary friends, and what are they there to teach us? My upbringing, I come from a single parent household dynamic where my mother played the role of the masculine and the feminine. So the energy within the divine feminine was very alpha. And so I took that role for many, many years. And also too, I am an alpha woman, coming into that realization of the beauty of polarity. First of all, really knowing where you reside, and from there, understanding the energy and the importance of integration of both for yourself, because we both have those energies, and to be able to, unfold them and invite people into that energy as well. So in terms, just kind of like in a nutshell, my upbringing when it comes to the masculine, feminine, where that resided inside of me from a very young age. It all starts really with Mary Magdalene, is what I came to later find out in life. And interesting enough, I did see my mother very much devotee of La Virgen de Guadalupe.
Yeah. Is this the brown virgin? No, this is not the lady of Our Lady of Guadalupe, is it?
La Virgen de Guadalupe, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That came, and so this is from our Mexican roots. I have, for Clay, my Mexican roots is that we have, and because the brown virgin is, and how she appeared to I forget who it was, but she appeared, and this is where Our Lady of Guadalupe and the shrine and all that came from, right? Is that
right?
Do I
And
remember?
I also like
I'm like a snowball. I'm like a snowball. I'm white on the outside and brown on the inside. You know those Hostess snowballs? So, see, and so here we are. Here we are in 2020, and we're getting a chance. It feels to us, what we're doing is we're here in search of the new compassionate male. It feels like that there is something arising, that a shift is happening. And I love how you phrase this, because so much of the work that I've seen in like spiral dynamics, integral and integral theory is, it's all about the coming together, the integration rather than the separation.
right, right. And I will tell you that it was very interesting because as I'm in my second year of my PhD program in depth psychology with a specialization in integrative healing and therapy practices, I was in the search of my own journey around a dissertation topic. And I asked Spirit, what are we in need of right now? And it was very clear to me as time progressed that I can be that person to plant, not the only one, but the one to plant that seed into the integration of the masculine and the feminine. Because if we trace back in time, history has been revealed. And when something has not been worked around, or we did not learn the lesson the first time, history will repeat. Always.
And
That's where we are right now, right?
I mean, how do any of us surprise that is it a surprise to any of us that we will end up meeting the same person over and over again until we deal with that particular issue? Why wouldn't we as humanity have to deal with exactly the same issues over and over again until we learn that lesson? It seems like it certainly has been in my life, Vanessa, and when I've talked with Clay, is that these lessons keep coming back to us, and because they're coming up, they're being called to be healed.
Absolutely. So we pay attention to that. And I think it's important, and it is time for both the masculine and the feminine to pay attention to this, which kind of takes me into this concept of descending to ascend and how we need that. And within my clients, I find it very, to some degree, comical, but I'm paying attention to that common thread of what I've been hearing for the last few years around men telling me, no, I'm not going to consider her. And so we kind of go in much more deeper into what exactly does that mean? And so men are becoming intimidated by women because the reality is that women are becoming a lot more conscious faster than men. And so men
Yes.
are feeling behind. And so how the men are feeling behind. And from that energy of feeling behind, what I've been hearing a lot is the common thread around, oh, I feel a little intimidated, or she's too good for me, or she's too much for me. And so it's interesting because I've been hearing myself tell the masculine, the woman that you perceive to be too good for you is exactly the woman that you need to be with.
Boy,
I listen to Clay. Go.
Yeah, yeah, and that's specifically the work that we do in our men's circle, and my justification for men to gather with men to collectively raise our consciousness. I say, women tend to have a higher level of consciousness than men, just as you said. And, they're up here and we're down here, And this idea of, well, the women need to come down here to meet guys where they are, that's not going to work.
Right.
We've got to raise our consciousness level there. And you're right. It is, there is an element of intimidation there.
Exactly.
And that's work that we men have got to do.
And all of our intuition, all of our mysticism, the things that we get a chance to learn and grow, where we can. Vanessa, it's hard for you to understand because you haven't gone through what we have, in the sense of having of being at the front of the line, of always being looking out and seeing why the Senate is nearly all male and the House is nearly all male and everything's all male. So we, like fish in water, don't even understand what it's like not to be. So therefore I feel we got lazy. And now we're having to say, wait a minute, in this world, If you want to understand it and you want to succeed in the world, we're going to have to, as men, bring our full game. We've got to show up. We've got to show up and learn. And this is what the divine feminine can teach us.
And that doesn't mean being more hyper masculine.
No.
Right.
It's just it's the integration of the
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're teaching us, Vanessa.
Thank you. And I feel that my role is really that, which it allows me to highlight, when you mentioned the word lazy, it takes me into men have been working and operating in comfort zone. And through that comfort zone, what's happening through that comfort zone is that my clients hate when I say this, but look, it is what it is that when you become comfortable and you're unconscious and you have not worked your process, you end up marrying your parents. And that's where our underlying issues come from. All of them, actually. I can't tell you how many times I've dated my father. God bless that I'm not married yet, because I'm becoming even more conscious not to marry him. I love my father, but we fall into this trap. It becomes unconsciously, it becomes comfortable to marry our parents because that's our programming and all we've ever known. And that never works out.
No.
I want to pick up on that. I totally agree with what you're saying. And what I have witnessed is that it's a generalization, but these fellas that cannot hold on to a relationship, they're going from woman to woman to woman to woman.
Yep.
They're trying to embrace this divine feminine within themselves by looking outside of themselves.
I love how you're saying that, Clay, because I've been seeing this paradigm. And again, this is where we're allowing ourselves to see what has not worked so we can emerge into the compassionate male, right? In that integration that we're talking about. But with what you're saying, Clay, it reminds me of, when that happens, not only does it not work out, but it kind of takes you into the search of coming to the realization of your own wholeness, not finding it out there. So Clay, when you talk about going from one woman to another, and women do this too, right? So men and women have a tendency. It's been my experience with my clients that, let's just say, whether you're coming out of a separation and you're divorced now, or whether you're coming from a relationship separation, whatever that is, people have not allowed themselves to really tap into their inner work. And when they go into a relationship right away, what happens is that you're trying to avoid what you've been avoiding all along. And humanity is here to tell you, you can no longer avoid it. You need to face it. You need to be with it. You need to move forward, and you need to work around that. And that's where we are right now.
I love that. And I love, Vanessa, us being willing to do our inner work. This is what I see in the men's circle and the work that we do here with In Search of the New Compassionate Male is our willingness to be heroic enough to do our inner work, because I will never find outside of myself. It's like we know in addiction, always looking for something. I don't care whether it's, if we think that a particular car or a job or a degree or some type of acclaim will heal what that hole is inside. It cannot be done. We must do that inner work.
Absolutely. And no person out there can actually do it for yourself. You need to do this for yourself, which is why it's so important. It's been my experience. And again, with my female clients, when it comes to the compassionate male and getting men there, it's not about us getting them there or fixing them or pushing them, but within the divine feminine, knowing the difference between allowing the man space. And from there, working on how you're showing up and what you're embracing, because everything in life is energy, vibration, and frequency. And if a woman shows up in this way, it actually supports the masculine to show up how we want them to. But it's not about telling them, because we're not here to babysit men.
Thank you. I love your ferocity. I just love how absolutely clear you are and how you call us to our better angels, rather than to tell us. You're calling us and you're exemplifying by your example, because that's the only way I can learn. I can learn by an example. I mean, we think of any of the great teachers that we have, they always said, here, let me show you. And then we follow and we model. And you modeled that for us.
Thank you. I'm a big believer of conversation, of deep-rooted conversation, as we are, and knowing that we are actually what we're talking and mimicking and our role models, we are embodying this, because we're in the integration right now of the masculine and the feminine, having this dialogue for the highest good of all concerned. And that takes me into what Clay had mentioned earlier around the ascension, right? And so right now, talking about my clients feeling the intimidation of like, oh, I don't want to date her, I don't want to marry her because she's too good for me. What's happening right now with the feminine, and how this can start to change the old paradigm that we're, first of all, as I mentioned, we're not here to fix, we're not here to judge. However, as we are ascending, right, it's not for the woman to descend for the man, as Will mentioned, and it's also not onto the woman to wait for him. But how about that as she continues to ascend, that she's allowing to set the tone, and the man can set that pace for himself, right? Because he can take ownership of his own power. And really, my intention and my dream, let's say, is that we learn to integrate so that we can both ascend. When masculine and energy learn to ascend together, they can actually acquire and they can actually flourish more from whatever that is. I truly believe that woman and man cannot do on their own. They need to be integrated in order not only for their own healing personally, but for the healing of humanity. And really, that's much more meaningful, and that's true bliss and happiness.
Do you feel that, and this works even in same-sex or fluid gender relationships, right? We're just talking about one being in relationship to the other, and the energies that were going on. Do you see that?
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you're bringing that up. First of all, I do want to make clear that my specialty is not LGBTQ. I do have friends that I like to refer that that's their specialty. My specialty is within, we're talking about man and women, right? Within that paradigm. However, I'm happy that you're bringing that up, because yes, we're talking about energies, because even if you're in relationship with a woman and a woman, or a man, people need to understand that you will always reside in one energy more than the other. So for example, if it's a woman and a woman, there's a woman that will always reside more in the alpha, in the masculine. So those energies take place as well. So even though this is not my specialty, this also can relate for people that are in that kind of partnership and relationship. Deep breath.
I just love, we love, one of the things that we love is to let these wonderful moments, these spaces, because we were talking about the difference in, like the power in the music is between the notes. And to sit here and to have an opportunity to be able to have a grace-filled conversation with you, Vanessa, to know that your power, and to be able, because I love, we've been in this, and as we've had the men's circles, we've talked about how do we allow ourselves to learn from and with women, because we've had this gender dynamic, of the male leading and what, but to be able to have to be able to learn from and with our partners that are women, those of us who are in relationships with women, and to be able to do that in a graceful way is such a powerful experience, and not something that we were taught as boys. I mean, we were taught in a very much of it was more of either a male dominant, or in South Texas, where I grew up, there was a lot of female power, where there was a matriarchal, and there are wounds within a matriarchal culture too, because we don't have that integration that you're talking about.
Right. And speaking of that integration, that even takes me into politics, because I truly believe that everything in life is integrated. And even our politicians are a manifestation of where we are. And so, for instance, as you well know, where we are now when it comes to politics, I don't focus too much whether Republicans won or Democrats. I personally feel them like they're kind of the same out of my own experiences. But I am focused on the newness. So talk about the emergence of, right, the compassionate male, the newness of this new emergence of this integration, first time in history, woman of color vice president, not
Yes.
behind or in front, but beside a white male president.
Yep.
So that together they can create these new policies in support of what we're talking about. So I'm really excited and very optimistic for that, not just for me, my generation, but for
Yep.
those to come. And for those that have been in the past that can still continue to learn and gain from that energy. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. You know, when you were talking about the ages, what came to mind for me was, you know, Dennis and I'm in my 60s and Dennis is
72.
He's 72. And I'm not sure how to engage younger men in this conversation. I feel like it's relevant, but the population that I'm working with is not the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings. They tend to be older than that.
And you're much closer with your client base and with the work that you're doing. You're much closer. Are you seeing are we artificially putting up barriers that we do not know so that we can invite more younger men into this? How are the conversations going there, Vanessa? Can you help us?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. And I will tell you, because every quarter I check my rankings and the population and the numbers with Transforming Consciousness, which is my radio show. And I am seeing, which I've been very, I don't know if the word is surprised, but it fulfills me, because talk about that age group that right now, as we speak, my age group actually happens to be 35 to 60. So it's pretty broad out there. And so there's been those moments where I think, like, who am I, right, at 37? Like, who am I to talk to someone in their 60s? But, but talk about energy. I am a very old soul. And those that know me and have been in my energy, they know that I've been here for a very long time. So I may well be young and look young, but I have a very old soul. So there's a lot of that wisdom that comes through for me at my age. And so perhaps that's where I reside, around that interesting broad age group. But as far as your question around how to be able to integrate it or bring that in, it's been my experience, and I only speak from my own experience, that when you open the portals to have people from different age groups come into your energy, just the way you invited me, because I truly believe in the power of energy, you are already inviting my listeners that are in their 30s. You're inviting that energy in. And so you're going to see, of course, only time will tell, but I see it every time. You will start to see this shift coming through for the compassionate male and what you both offer.
Well, thank you for that. And stressing that we're in search of the new compassionate male. So I want to engage the 20-somethings and 30-somethings in that search, because I'm not going to have the answer. I'm not going to say, here's, do this and this. I need them to engage in this too, because their frame of reference, where they are in life, is absolutely as relevant as anybody else.
Yes.
And it's a bigger question than one age group.
Right. What I am experiencing, however, is that the age group that I teach, they're in their early 20s. And I believe the oldest one is 25. They're becoming curious. That's the word that has been coming through for me a lot, where they're starting to ask me questions based on the lecture. Like, oh, Professor Valdez, when you mentioned this. And so I'm enjoying it, because it's not so much that they're telling me yet, oh, I'm tuning in and listening to your show, or I'm doing this. It's not so much about doing, but it's almost like they're becoming very curious to, like, okay. So that gives me hopes, because it allows me to see within my students that through that curiosity, a lot can open up. A lot of portals can open up for them. And I will say that that generation is a lot more woke than we were when we were in our early 20s.
Thank
Amen.
God. Thank goddess.
Yes.
Oh yes. And that's what excites me, is that the distance is being truncated, that what it took me decades, they can get through in months and really learn faster and really to be able to go through this. I love this, thinking about this as digital immigrants and digital natives. Well, we're digital immigrants and we're always having to make that translation from linear to nonlinear. And they're digital natives. They were born, their brains are wired differently. They're wired digitally. Want to have my midlife crisis at 19? Fine, I'll go ahead, get it out of the way, and then go on and be able to being really able to learn. And so they're open to you, and they're open to what you're saying. And I love what you said, Vanessa, about curiosity, because once someone is curious, everything is possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But if we're not curious, if I'm closed off, if I've already closed off and made my decision to say that, oh no, there's nothing to that, I'm not going to even go there, my growth stops.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy that you're mentioning that, Dennis, because it takes me into my clients when they ask me the question in the beginning, will I get transformation from our time together? And so my answer will always be, how willing are you and how open are you to become, curious, to explore? So you don't even have to really fully be there yet, but as long as you're curious and you're willing and you're present, that's really all it takes. And then from there, you start to see that change for yourself.
I keep thinking about these young folks that you're working with, and I just so feel like they have answers that they don't know they have, and they're answers that we in our generation are looking for. We may not know that we're looking for those, and it's the curiosity, it's the ability for us to come together in a curious manner, open that up to discovering something that neither one of us had an idea about. And that's what I'm really, really looking for, because I know it's out there, and I know that we haven't gotten there yet. Mm-hmm. I know that we'll always be working to get there, but we'll get closer and closer and closer. But we need help.
Yes. And that's what I see, Clay, you've gone to Kenya and you've gone around the world, and we've taken the podcast around the world, and this is happening all over, Vanessa. As you well know, this is not just a Southern California phenomenon or a Central Texas woo-woo Austin place. This is happening. Something is occurring here in the world. I think it's a consciousness 2.0, something very profound. I mean, how would we know? What would be the imperative? Whatever it was the imperative for us to go from our biological ancestors to really to move to this. What was that imperative to move to that next level? Well, it feels like to me that there is something happening. We're in the middle of an evolution of consciousness into this integrated state.
Absolutely. And again, it takes me into, each individual, we're planting that seed. And I'm a true advocate for, instead of focusing on what we haven't done yet, to really focus on what we are doing, and that we continue to be in that energy. And just this, perhaps for someone who is not there yet, that may tune in and not take it so seriously. Perhaps for the person who's not woke yet, this may just seem like a conversation or an interview, but what we're doing is we're really planting the seed for that generation that we're talking about and for those to come. That's what
Yes.
we're really doing.
And by doing it, by all three of us showing up as open and as vulnerable as we can possibly be, so I can learn as much from this conversation, to have as few preconceived notions as to what this conversation was going to be about, so that I could learn and grow as much as I possibly could during this holy experience.
Right.
Yeah, and I would invite any young man in his 20s and his 30s, I would invite any of them, and I do invite them into this conversation. And they can reach out to me on my website, clayboykin.com, and I would love to hear from them and hear their views and perspectives on what's going on. I think they feel it. I think they feel it, and I think that they got answers. Like I said earlier, I think they've got answers they may not know that they have.
Yep.
If we can have that conversation in a state of curiousness, I think we'll move forward.
And this is where I love about diversity, and I love about that's where I love having Vice President-elect Harris. I listened to her biography, her autobiography, and she read it herself. And how lovely to be able to have someone read to you their stories. And we all have our own stories, and of course we collate it and put it into a place. But the coherence of it, the compassion, the light, the perspective, to know that this will be at the top of our ticket, and also, and one of the things that I respect about President-elect Biden is that he is inviting her as a partner,
Right.
not as a subservient. He is inviting her as a do this with me, not stand by and that is a dynamic that I do not believe many in the country have come to understand how important that will be.
And I love that you're shedding light to that, Dennis, because I pay attention a lot to body language, and because I'm in the energy. So even sometimes when I'm not aware of it, I'm called to it, to pay attention. And with what you're saying, I've been paying attention to the body language around what I mentioned earlier that you reminded me of. She's not in front of him or behind him, but they're beside each other. And I had never in the past, maybe there is, but I have never in the past seen on the cover of the magazines where they're both beside each other and they're both raising their hands. Typically it's with the wife or with vice president male. So we're starting to see that. And our children, I'm saying
Yes.
ours. I'm saying ours as if I have some, but I've been the extension of a mother.
Yes.
But with that, our children are paying attention to that. The age group that you're talking about in their 20s and their 30s, they're paying attention to that. And so that alone, it's starting to open up more portals and creating more curiosity, which takes me to what Clay mentioned earlier around what you're both offering, right? You know, the community, which takes me also into the in search of a compassionate male. Because oftentimes I'm being asked by friends and colleagues and clients, how do we get there? So we're having the conversation. And of course, as we continue to have a conversation, because we're not here to say we have all the answers. However, there are two things that I can share, and Clay just well mentioned one of them. In order to be able, if you're open and you're willing, and you're aware that where you've been has not worked and the potential that you have to be at a much higher altitude than where you are right now, is to allow yourself, male, to integrate and join community with other woke men as yourselves, other compassionate, woke, conscious men. Because think about it, if you want to, for instance, or in my case, back in the days, when I wanted to learn how to dance salsa, do you think that I was hanging around people that did not know how to dance? I remember telling myself, I will surround myself by the international, all the best salsa dancers, because I want to learn. So I use that as an example because that relates to all aspects of life. To be able to open up yourselves to that compassionate male that resides inside of you. It's just a matter of that integration and bringing it forward.
Right.
You need to be around men that are speaking your same language, not men that are doing elsewhere, not to judge them, but they're not just woke yet. So that's number one. And then number two, as what we talked about last time, is to be able to have a connection with God, whatever that is, whether that's higher source, whether that's God. I feel comfortable saying God because I connect with that word. Whatever that is, there is a higher energy than us because we're just too ignorant to be able to be with our own thoughts. So there's a higher energy, and to be able to befriend and connect with that energy. When I have clients tell me, oh, Vanessa, I'm meditating now, I'm being and taking your advice, but then all of a sudden they fall off the wagon and they're asking me, why did that happen? I was there, but then I just fell off the wagon. And so that kind of takes me into the word happiness, because there's an expectation of happiness. When you allow yourselves to integrate into this energy of your relationship with God, it cannot get any better than that. When you allow yourself to integrate from there, you're going to start to feel the word meaning. So to really focus on the meaning and the intention versus like, I'm going to do it because I want to be happy, then you're going to fall off the wagon. I see it all the time.
Adding to that, and it is a higher sense of purpose. Yeah. And I think that goes hand in hand with the connection to spirit, to God, to, Mother, Father, God, however you express it, that higher sense of purpose is so important. I keep coming back to Viktor Frankl and what he says, if you aim at success, you're going to miss. You have to aim at something higher.
It's the same thing, isn't it, Vanessa, with happiness? If I'm aiming for happiness, I'm searching for it outside of me. I will never find it. But if I find meaning, then happiness will arise out of that purpose.
Absolutely. And speaking of that integration, the only way that the compassionate male can even get there and be able to integrate with the other partner is by having a relationship with God, which essentially God is an energy that resides inside of us.
Yes.
Having a relationship with yourself. You're not going to be able to be compassionate towards another woman. You're not going to be able to show compassion or even be there if you can't even offer yourself that. So let's
Thank you. It must. When the expression charity begins at home,
right.
At home. Love begins at home. I cannot treat you. I can pretend to treat you. I can treat you in a way that sucks energy from me if I'm trying to be kind to you before I'm kind to myself. But if I really want to offer you a gift, I must offer it to me first. I must come from a place of wholeness rather than a place of halfness.
And that is so true, which takes me into a show that I had in the beginning of the pandemic with this wonderful gentleman who works a lot with the material of Joseph Campbell. And so the title of that particular show was The Heroic Death of the Isolated Ego. And so when we delved into what does that mean, it takes me into what we're talking about, because again, everything is interrelated. And so for the males that are out there, I want to share what I've been hearing a lot during the pandemic in resonance to that is there all of a sudden men are wanting that 5-year plan. And I say 5, it could be a year or 10 years, but typically on average, you'll hear like the 5-year plan. It's good to be goal oriented and to challenge yourself, but you need to really be able to know where you stand. Because if you keep telling yourself, oh, for the 5-year plan, because look at the pandemic and like, where am I going to be in the 5-year plan? What you're doing is that you're residing in your altered ego, because the ego only resides in the past and in the future. The altered ego does not know how to reside in the present. So if you truly want to be in search of the compassionate male, you need to learn how to reside in the present. And the only way is by befriending God, because God is in the present. That's where he, she resides.
Isn't she amazing, Clay?
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
it? I mean, Clay
yeah.
and I, you have to understand, we're basking. We're basking in your grace, in your power, and in your wisdom, and being able to be in your presence, Vanessa. What a wonderful opportunity to do that. And what you remind me, Vanessa, in you and your ministry and in your teaching and the work and your life work, which is the presence of who you are on the planet, which is the greatest teacher. You want to know who you are? Look at your life. Look at where you're going. Is that your consistent reminder that my job is to stay in the footwork. My job is not the results. My job is to do what is right in front of me, to sit and be as present and as clear and have that intuitional whisper to take that next move in a direction following that North Star. But the results, that's not my job, because I will always stop. I will always ask for too little. I'll come to the universe asking, I'll come with a cup like this. And the universe is saying, I'll give it. Why do you not come to me with any size that you want? And I'm thirsty.
Yeah. And it's, that reminds me, Dennis, thank you so much for sharing that it's truly time. We're not here to tell people this is what you have to do. But in order to talk about inviting people in is by embodying that and us being that and taking ownership of it, so that others can follow. Because think about it. I mean, I see both of you and I'm at awe and I'm enamored and I'm honored to be in your energy, because the men, talk about statistics. I'm not making this up. Most of the people that have died during COVID are men. Men die sooner than women. Men are the ones that are more homeless out there without shelter. Men
and suicide and depression and
everything. So for me, it's like, I'm a lover of the masculine. I am concerned. It is also my responsibility to be able to be there, not to judge you, but to say, hey, do you want to ascend with me? Let's integrate and let's do this together.
Thank you. I am so glad that little red button is still recording, and that just makes me so happy. Oh, Vanessa, this is not the last time. We shall ask you to come and share with us and continue to see what you have learned on the journey since the last time we've gotten. Right, Clay?
Amen.
Amen. But thank you. Thank you for this time today. Thank you for being our friend. Thank you for being our collaborator. Thank you for being our inspiration and along with us. Clay, anything to say?
Echoing what you said, please come back, Vanessa.
Thank you. I received the offer and I know that I will in divine timing, and yes, excited by then to continue sharing whatever more of that research from my dissertation around yes, the integration of the masculine and the feminine. So definitely thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa Valdéz, Clay Boykin, my precious Clay. And thank you everyone for listening and watching to another episode of In Search of the New Compassionate Male. We will see you all next time.